This episode of Sportish is sponsored by the Active Industry First Start Traineeship program, funded by the Queensland Government.
Hello and welcome to Sportish, where we look at life through the lens of sport. I'm Libby Trickett.
And I'm Georgie Trickett.
And today, Georgie, we have another guest.
I'm so excited. I love that we've got some people rolling through the studio, as well as just getting to chat to you on occasion.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, that's fun too. But it's also fun bringing people in.
It is absolutely a joy.
So we have Tim Oberg. Georgie, can you tell us a little bit about Tim?
I'd love to. Tim Oberg is a visionary social entrepreneur and community builder, best known for founding Parkrun Australia in 2011.
Little known Parkrun.
You might have heard of it. Transforming a single event on the Gold Coast into a nationwide phenomenon with over 1 million participants. With a background in human movement and education, Tim's leadership was defined by a commitment to radical inclusivity and the belief that physical activity should be a free, accessible pillar of social connection.
We love all of those things.
Just obsessed with this. After over a decade at the helm of Parkrun, he's shifted his focus to the next generation as the founder of the Healthy Kids Project and the RAD Run Club. Tim, thank you for joining us on Sportish.
Thank you. So great to be here. And I'm always happy to have an introduction like that. So thank you so much.
We'll post it to you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Frame it.
Up on the wall.
We're all parents. We don't get those kind of plugs.
Not at all.
Next time your children give you any crap, you can just turn around and go, this is who I am, guys.
It's just FYI.
I'm visionary.
Well, literally 5 minutes ago, I was washing my baby daughter in the sink.
Yeah.
So, you know, now here we are on the podcast. So
this is real life. Tim, can you describe a little bit about your first experience of parkrun at the Wimbledon Common in London?
Yeah, so I lived in the UK between 2001 and 2010. And it was when I was over there that I really got into recreational running. Before that, I was more of a team sports player in high school, and then I actually got involved in Olympic weightlifting all through university, and then moved to the UK. So the one, I guess, physical activity that I could kind of do no matter where I was, even if I was traveling and, you know, in Europe or somewhere like that, was I could chuck on a pair of runners and I could go for a run. So I got into rec running, started doing, 10Ks and half marathons and did a marathon and all that. And then I got into triathlon.
You don't need to brag about that as well.
I was in a triathlon club called the Wimbledon Wind Milers. And they were called that because at Wimbledon Common in London is this beautiful old windmill. And that's where they would, often meet for a lot of their training rides and runs. And my now wife and I found a street dog and adopted a dog. That's a whole nother podcast.
I love that.
But my dog Clarence and I would always, when I would go for my runs, he would come with me. So he was like my training buddy. Even when I trained for a marathon, he trained with me. So I had this little running buddy dog. And one day, it was in 2009, somebody from 2010 actually, it was the last year that I was living in the UK. Someone from the triathlon club said to me, do you know that there's this place you can go, there's this event on a Saturday morning where you can take it and you can run with your dog and you can get a time. And I already sort of knew my 5K PB, but I was instantly curious as to what Clarence the dog could run his 5K in.
Brilliant.
So I registered myself for this thing called parkrun that I'd never heard of. And actually back in those very early days, a lot of people would register their dog as well. So now I didn't do that, but I know a lot of people did, and certainly you can't do that anymore. So if you're listening, don't think you can register your dog for parkrun.
But missed opportunity.
There would be a lot of dogs at parkrun with barcodes on their collars, and people would cross the line and get scanned, and then their dogs would get scanned. So you had, Fido the dog and so on doing parkrun. Anyway, so Clarence and I rocked up on this like a summer morning. So it was a beautiful morning in Wimbledon Common. It's a really beautiful park. And as I say, you're sort of in the shadows of this windmill and all these people standing around and they're having a chat. And I instantly thought, oh, this is cool. This isn't like a normal fun run where everyone's kind of freaking out a little bit and it's all super serious and everyone's got the Lycra on and the fast shoes. And so Clarence and I, we sort of just listened to the brief and we did the run, and Clarence's PB, and I'll never forget it because it's an easy number to remember, he did 20 minutes 20, which wasn't much slow. I think at the time my 5K was like 20:10, so he didn't really slow me down. But then, so we did this run and then we hung around. We didn't go for coffee, but I just remember hanging around and again thinking, this is a little bit different to a normal, fun run or whatnot. And then a couple of months later, I went again, and classic parkrun stuff up. I forgot my barcode. Any parkrun, don't forget your barcode. Don't forget your barcode. So history only shows Clarence and I of having done one parkrun in Wimbledon Common, but we actually did two. And it was after that second experience that I thought, because I was already sort of planning my move back to Australia, what am I going to do? You mentioned that I had a human movement degree, and so I was wanting to work in the field of sport, health, fitness. I didn't kind of know where. I was looking at different ideas, and I thought, well, this parkrun concept, this would work in Australia. So I sent an email to Parkrun just through their website. I didn't know who was at the end of it. But pretty quickly, I'd say within a day or two, I had a reply from Paul Sinton-Hewitt, who's the founder of Parkrun, and he was interested and wanted to meet for a cup of coffee. So not long after, we met for a cup of coffee in Wimbledon, and that went well. I sort of explained who I was, that I had this kind of sport background, yet for the previous 10 years in the UK, I'd actually been working, ran my own travel and events business. So I think the fact that I had this kind of events background and sport background sort of ticked some boxes, I guess. I guess I gave him my take on what parkrun was all about, which was, I could see it was more than a run. It was much more about community and health and community connection and so on. And then they said, yeah, let's do it. So, yeah, they drafted up the first ever parkrun international license agreement. I brought back to Australia, and I landed in Australia in January 2011, kind of ready to go, not knowing what this parkrun thing was going to be. And obviously the journey that then took me on, and that obviously continues today for parkrun, is quite unbelievable. The amount of people that now do parkrun, not just in Australia, but all over the world.
Tim, when you pitched the concept of parkrun for Australia a year later, you're here on the shores, many local running clubs initially viewed it as a threat, which is fascinating to think about now in hindsight. How did you turn the clubs around from being skeptics into partners who saw it as a feeder system for the wider running community?
Yeah, it didn't happen quickly. There was an instant reaction from running clubs and also other running events, thinking, well, people aren't going to pay to do our fun run now because they can do this free event on a Saturday, or people aren't going to join our running club because they can just do this thing on the Saturday. And, I guess I felt within myself, I didn't have any evidence to back this up, but I felt within myself that was wrong, and that actually parkrun was now going to sort of complement the existing structures within running. But it took a while for us to actually really be able to evidence that with any data. Probably the first, I'd say, 2 to 3 years, it was a hard sell, even trying to explain parkrun to Athletics Australia, or Australian Athletics as they are now, Queensland Athletics, where I was based. They didn't necessarily get it straight away. And that's not their fault. Like, this was, a new concept, kind of, really disrupting, I guess, quite a traditional model. And so, but what we saw, once we got into after those initial 2 and 3 years, was so many other running clubs and running groups spawning off parkrun. Existing running clubs memberships were booming, and then other running events just went from strength to strength to strength. And there's a global running boom going on right now, has been for the last couple of years. Like, you ask anyone in any running event how their numbers are going, and they'll say, like, we're selling out. And it's, there's lots of reasons why, but you can't discount the fact that parkrun, which started here, 2011, or in the UK, obviously before that, 2004, we're now over a generation into parkrunners. And so these people are just running. There's so many people just who are running, wanting to do running events, wanting to do that next step, that next thing. I've done 100 parkruns. What's next? Well, now I'm going to start doing, adventure racing or whatever it might be. So, yeah, so it was tricky at first. And, I did work really closely with Athletics Australia and the CEOs of the various state bodies as well within athletics to try and get that message out. Hey, we're not a threat. We're supporting what you're doing. Get on board. And we would encourage running clubs to come to parkrun and do like a volunteer takeover, so that they would be wearing their running club outfits. And then, they'd be scanning your barcode and having a chat. And, that was the best way to sort of debunk that, was to sort of, come on down and do it. And that's where you're going to recruit more members. You're going to sit down with them and have a cup of coffee and go, hey, like, what are you doing on Tuesday? Why don't you come to our run club session? And then, it just went from there. So now, pleasingly, the consensus is that parkrun does really support other, not just running clubs, but I think all sport. People are getting back into physical activity at parkrun and then joining touch football or the netball club or the swimming squad or whatever it might be. But parkrun is that gateway. It's that first step back into physical activity for so many.
Tim, you kind of mentioned how parkrun is such a great reintroduction for so many people into movement, into exercise. Obviously, it's free and accessible. Both Georgie and I have done park runs. It's been a family experience that's involved kids, multiple kids in prams.
Multiple prams.
Bikes and scooters and dogs. How many Australians have been involved in this community initiative since it's begun in 2011, 2012?
April 2011 was the first parkrun at Main Beach on the Gold Coast. And now it's like well over 1 million. I mean, I think it's sitting at about 1.4 million or something like that. You might have to fact check me on that. But I know certainly when I left parkrun in 2022, it was just under, it was like 900 and something thousand. It's crazy, because when you think about that as a percentage of the population, I can't imagine that there's any other program nationally that would be touching that. But at the same time, it shows there's still so many more people who haven't. So despite the fact that it's incredibly successful, it's the kind of program that the entire population would benefit from participating at parkrun in some way, not even as a runner, but even if you just came and volunteered once a month. It's just a way to meet people and be part of your community. I think that's, the brilliance of parkrun in terms of how it's put together, and not just parkrun. There are so many incredible programs out there doing things for communities, and everyone can benefit from it.
People should know that, for me, I can't run at this stage of my life, but you can walk. I know it says parkrun in the name, but you can absolutely walk the 5 kilometers. You can just do one part of the section and work your way up. There's no judgment. And I think that's what's really cool, is obviously you have the guys who are super fast running off at the very beginning, wanting to get PBs and, maybe their 50th or 100th park run. But then there's people at the back with prams or with dogs or
children,
young children participating in their first one. It's a really beautiful community event. And I think that's what, you speak to so beautifully, is that it is such a community-focused celebration of movement.
And actually, interestingly, one of the few intergenerational sports where you do see whole families participating in this Saturday morning activity. That's so incredibly unique.
So unique these days.
As you've touched on, right, so parkrun can be whatever you want it to be, depending on what stage of your life you're at. And, you talked about prams and dogs and so on. And, I already said I got into it with my dog, and then we started having children. So then I became a single pram runner, and then we had the second child, and I was a double pram runner. And then the first one got out of the pram, and so then I was a single pram runner with a little one next to me, and then, get back into running by myself or with my kids actually all running with me. And, just depending on where you're at, parkrun kind of meets you there, whatever you want it to be. So, and I'm a little bit like you as well, Libby, in that I don't run that much anymore. I've got injuries and stuff. You're more likely to find me walking at a parkrun than running at a parkrun these days. The stats back that up in terms of the walking being such a huge part of parkrun, because, you look at the average time, the average finish time for parkrun over the years, it gets slower and slower and slower. And, typically that would be a bad thing if you looked at a program and you said people are getting slower. Something's not working
We're
here.
We're making things worse.
Yeah, exactly right. But what it actually means is more walkers are realising that they're welcome at parkrun. So you've still got the people at the pointy end, and they're getting faster and faster, as we've seen by the sub 2 hour marathon the other day. So the pointy end's getting faster and bigger, but so is the other end, which is people feeling comfortable to walk, and, kids and elderly people participating as well.
Tim, many people may not know that you actually have a background in weightlifting, and it wasn't endurance running that necessarily was a big overarching part of your life. How has being a non-traditional runner influenced the way you design community sports events to appeal to people or children who don't necessarily see themselves as athletes?
There's a couple of points there. And one is coming into a running event, organising what is, I guess on the surface of it, a running event, but coming from a non-traditional background, straight away that was unique because athletics people will be the first people to tell you that they struggle to see anything through a lens other than the lens of athletics. Again, they'll also tell you that most people don't want to do athletics, like as a sport. Like if you said, hey, let's go and do athletics, they're like, no, I don't want to do that. Like that's that thing that you see on the TV. Coming into, what was the athletics or industry from a non-athletics background, I think was pretty interesting because, you had to look at everything, particularly around the way we communicated what parkrun was, and not just in terms of the language, but also the visuals. Because typically, you look at a Nike advertisement or, look at something on Athletics Australia's Facebook page, you're looking at super fit people, right? These are the 1%, right? Now, if you try to communicate to the masses and you're saying, come to parkrun, and you're using that sort of imagery or that sort of language, people will look at that and they can't relate. So they look at that and go, well, that's not me. So I'm clearly not going to be welcome there. So I guess this was a really steep learning curve for me, was around the importance of inclusive language in how we communicated. And even being that in the first couple of years that we had parkrun here, the person who got up and spoke at the start of parkrun was called the race director. We quickly realised that if we had the word race anywhere around parkrun, it was going to be turning off a percentage of people to say, well, I don't do races, right? So then that role, and still to this day, is called the run director. Now, it should almost be called something else because we know so many people walk at parkrun now. But, it's those subtle differences in how you present your program that I think coming from that non-athleticsy background made a lot of difference. To answer your question about the weightlifting, I mean, you couldn't get two sports that were any further apart from each other in terms of Olympic weightlifting that I did for probably like 6 years, and I was a national junior champion and really loved it. And part of the training for that was to not run. It was, because running is slow, unless you're sprinting, but otherwise, going for a run is slow twitch muscle fibers. And I was all about fast twitch muscle fibers. So I intentionally never ran because I would have been actually going against my training program. But the one thing that we did have within my weightlifting club was a great community. That's completely transferable from whether it's a weightlifting club or a book club or a mother's group, a church, and then parkrun. It's the same thing. It's about being connected to your people, to your community, being welcoming, being inclusive. And I think they're lessons that I sort of brought in with me into parkrun. And certainly now in my life, not just in terms of my professional life, but in everything I do, I'm super conscious of all of those things.
Hey, Libby.
Hey, Georgina.
Have you heard about the Active Industries First Start Traineeship program?
Is that the one where you get $20,000 wage subsidy for not-for-profit clubs and organisations?
Totally. I thought this was just wild and I didn't know that this existed, and I can already think of so many clubs that could benefit from this. This is a bit of money that you can use to bring someone on who's not just a volunteer, they're actually an employee of your club to help you get all the things done that you need to get done.
And are they the people who kind of haven't been in work for a while, so it helps them return to work as well?
It can be, or it can just be you converting a volunteer into somebody who can do all the doing.
Because that's the thing, in all of these sorts of organisations, it relies so much on volunteers and people are so busy. And they need to be able to put together these things that help organisations take it to another level.
We want people in clubs to be able to rely on somebody to print out the spreadsheets, to organise the websites so that the people who are volunteering can get out on the court or on the field and do what they do best.
Basically, people can take advantage and all they need to do is submit an application, and AQIA can actually help you with that. So head to the website or click the link in the show notes. Take advantage of this incredible opportunity. As you mentioned, you stepped away from parkrun in 2022, and since then you've turned your attention to kids specifically, founding the Healthy Kids Project, and as part of that, the RAD Run Club. Can you tell us a little bit about the RAD Run Club? Because this is something that Georgie and I are just like so excited to hear more about.
Many people who know parkrun will know that there's also a kids version of parkrun called Junior Parkrun. It happens on a Sunday. Now, we launched that here in Australia in 2018 while I was still with parkrun, and it just didn't gain the traction that we'd seen overseas. So in the UK and Ireland, it has grown at the same rate, if not quicker, than the 5 kilometre parkrun. So it's been incredibly well received. So I was really excited when we brought that in here in 2018. And I guess for me, as someone who'd been overseeing kind of normal parkrun, if you want to call it that, for 7 years, that this was going to be the next thing. And I was really looking forward to driving that. You know, anything to do with, getting kids moving, I'm an advocate for. And my understanding is parkrun is really going to try and continue to push it. But I think at the moment there's about half a dozen events around Australia. When I left parkrun, I said, okay, well, what are all the reasons why that didn't work? Like that it didn't take off the way. And I sort of wrote this list and I said, okay, well, I want to come up now with my version of a movement program for kids. And I'm going to make sure that all these reasons that I believe that the junior parkrun didn't take off, I'm going to engineer all of those out. And after a few iterations, came up with what is now the concept of the RAD Run Club. I'm not going to go into all those reasons, but what it is all about is, as much as it's a physical program, kids are running laps of the oval, the name RAD is very intentional because the RAD is an acronym for resilience, attitude, and determination. And I believe that by creating a physical activity program that enables children to develop those emotional capabilities is really, I guess, the sweet spot for what I wanted to try and create. So yes, you're going to get physically healthy. Yes, you're going to get physically fitter, but you're also going to become a more resilient, human. You're going to have a better attitude, a positive attitude to being physically active. And you're going to be someone who can really be determined. When you want to achieve something, when you want to run that next lap, whether the next lap is on the oval or it's a metaphor for something else in your life, you're going to have the ability to do that. So that's kind of how the RAD Run Club came to be. What it is basically before school run club. Now, it can also be used at break time or for brain breaks and whatnot, but the majority of schools that are using it as a before school run club. So the kids get dropped at school, 15, 20 minutes before the bell. And then it's a digital platform that enables the teachers to put this run club on. The parents register their children. They register them in their schoolhouse and also in their year level. And so the platform then enables the school to gamify the whole thing of the before school run club. So the kids are earning house points. They're earning points if you want to have, year level versus year level or house versus house or even school versus school. And in time, I'm sure we're going to have state of origin, state versus state and country versus country. And so, and that's the beauty of the digital platform is once we're, recording that data of the kids participating, we can then use that, to really make it fun. It makes it easier for teachers because instead of using Excel spreadsheets and clipboard folders and so on and so forth, it's just an app on their phone. It works on any device. Just stand there. They scan their kids' QR codes at the end of each lap. And then as soon as it's done, all the data's there waiting for them. They can use it at assembly or, talk to the kids at newsletters and so on and so forth. So, it's going really, really well. We did the pilots all last year. And now it's growing. And I think a month ago, there was about 30 schools. Now we've got 90. So the growth is really taking off, which is amazing.
Tim, I actually dropped my son at Run Club this morning. He loves it. It's absolutely a highlight of his week. But I know that it's really tricky for schools to find the people to run these clubs. If they've already got a club in place, is RAD something that teachers can use?
Yeah, 100%. So I would say over half the schools who are using the app already had some variation of a run club happening at their school, but they were probably doing some version of manually recording what the kids were doing and then having to then transfer that probably into a spreadsheet of some sort. And then from there, having to look at the numbers and go, okay, well, what are we doing with those numbers in terms of, are we going to use that to allocate points? That's even if they were doing that. They might not have even been doing that. It might just be the kids turn up and run. I don't know. But, I think it's the gamification that keeps the kids coming back. And also, in particular, the non-sporty kids. To ask a sporty kid to do laps of the oval, they're just going to go, great, let's go. But to try and get a non-sporty child doing it, you're kind of going to give them a hook. What I see and certainly the feedback I'm getting is it's all about the house points. because most primary schools at the end of each term, it's like the winning household gets the free dress day or the pizza party or whatever it might be. And that's it. So, but the beauty of it is it doesn't really matter how we hook them in, because what's happening subliminally is that they're starting to become kids who are physically active, and they might not even realise that. But before you know it, the non-sporty kid at the start of the term that walked 1 lap of the oval is now running 4 laps of the oval. They don't even see that journey. Like, the kids aren't even aware of that journey. But the next thing is, the next term, it's like, oh, who wants to sign up for cross country? Oh, well, I've done 4 laps of the oval. I might put my hand up. That's the goal. Like, for me, that is the success, is if we can, do something to get the non-sporty kids, the non-active kids, the ones who don't have the confidence, to just get out on the grass and just start walking those laps with their mates, then the rest of the journey will take care of itself.
Some might say you're trying to make the non-sporty kids sportish kids.
Very well done.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I wouldn't say that on the website because you might sue me. So.
Yeah. No,
Tim, please.
We absolutely love the work that you're doing. We're so grateful for people like you who are from parkrun, getting our Australian community moving, and now putting all your focus on getting our kids moving. Like, we're so grateful for people like you who are doing things that are free, accessible, available to schools all around Australia.
The program is called the RAD Run Club, and you can absolutely find more information about it in our show notes, or you can head to the website. What's your website, Tim?
radrun.club.
I love it. I love it. We're definitely part of the church that is Parkrun. We're excited about the opportunity to see RAD Run Club in more schools. Tim Oberg, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
What an absolutely incredible story of community sport.
I think the thing that I love about someone like Tim is that he has come from that non-traditional background. It's not just about being a runner. It's not just about, coming from human movements and exercise and all of those sorts of things. It's really about experiencing a community event and recognizing how valuable that is and wanting to bring it back to Australia. And I love that concept. And now he's transferring all of his skills that he learned through Parkrun into this RAD Run Club and the Healthy Kids Project.
It's actually reminded me how much I love parkrun. I don't get to do parkrun at the moment because my children's sport is on.
Yes.
But I'm going to try and make it work. I'm going to see if I can get it back into my schedule, because there was something so incredible about turning up with a group of people who didn't necessarily know each other, but were all there for a common goal. And that goal wasn't necessarily to win. It was to be part of something.
Totally. And that's the thing, it's that social connection. And you might not even actually chat to anybody, but you'll see the familiar faces, you'll see the similar people, you give everyone a smile and a hi and a wave goodbye as they run off into the distance. But it's just, I find that quite joyful. And that's what all of those running events, whether it's a park run or the Noosa Triathlon or any of those kind of big community social events, that's the joy that they bring. That's the energy that they bring.
It's so good to speak to the people who are doing this, who are part of our community sport, as much as we do speak to the elite athletes. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of Sportish. You can find us on all your podcast platforms.
And on the Instagram and on the YouTube.
On YouTube, on Spotify video, we're everywhere.
We're all over the place.
Thank you so much. We would love it if you could just give us a little review. 5 stars will be fine.
And if you think someone could benefit from this episode, maybe they want to get RAD Run Club into their schools,
Absolutely.
Make sure you share it with them.
Absolutely. We'll be back in your ears next week. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.
Okay, bye.
This episode of Sportish is sponsored by the Active Industry First Start Traineeship program, funded by the Queensland Government.